I'll marry you when I'm rich. The bread was hard enough to crack teeth, but to the bloodied boy crumpled in that alley, it was the first mercy he'd ever known. It cost Kayla Keaton her only meal that day. It bought her a ghost who would return as a king, dragging war and devotion to her doorstep in equal measure. Kayla was 9 years old when she found him behind the dumpsters in the alley near Greenfield Elementary. Just a child herself, wearing hand-me-down overalls and shoes 2 sizes too big. Her mama worked nights at the hospital. Her grandmother stretched every dollar until it screamed. But when she saw that trembling boy with blood crusted on his temple and bruises blooming purple across his ribs, something in her chest cracked open. The other kids called him gutter rat, threw rocks when he got too close to the school fence. But Kayla walked right up to him while the sun burned gold through the narrow alley between apartment buildings. She held out 2 pieces of bread wrapped in a napkin. "You need this more than me," she said. The boy Gyeon Myung, though she wouldn't learn his name for 3 more days, stared at her like she'd spoken a language that didn't exist in his world. Then his shaking hands reached out. He ate like someone who didn't know when food would come again, like every bite might be stolen away. She came back the next day, and the next. For 4 months, Kayla shared what little she had. Sometimes it was crackers, sometimes just an apple bruised from the discount bin. Once, she brought him her own jacket when autumn turned vicious. The morning Gyeon disappeared. His eyes were wild. "Hunted. They found me," he whispered through the chain-link fence behind the apartments. "The men who brought me here. I have to run." Kayla's throat went tight. "Where will you go?" "Anywhere they can't follow." His voice dropped, became something fierce and desperate. "But I'll survive. I promise you. I'll get rich, and when I come back..." He grabbed the fence so hard his knuckles went white. "I'll marry you." She laughed because the promise was too enormous to be real. Because she was 9, and he was maybe 10, and neither of them understood what those words would cost. She pulled the yellow ribbon from her ponytail, cheap, fraying, bought from a corner store, and tied it around his thin wrist. "So you remember," she said. "I'll never forget," Gyeon whispered. The next morning, the alley was empty. Kayla stood there in the rain, waiting for a boy who was already running toward a future built on blood and vengeance. 20 years dissolved like smoke. Gyeon Myung woke at 5:30 a.m. in a penthouse that cost more than some people earned in their lifetimes. Floor-to-ceiling windows. The city sprawled below him like a kingdom he'd conquered with his bare hands. Dawn came cold and colorless. He barely noticed anymore. The coffee machine was Italian, worth more than a car. He pressed a button and walked away before the cup filled. His closet held 43 suits, all black or charcoal, all tailored to perfection. He selected one without thought, the fabric sliding over shoulders broad from violence, from years of surviving when he should have died. The dragon tattoo that coiled up his chest and rose up his neck was a map of every scar he'd earned climbing out of hell. The apartment was silent. Always silent. No music, no laughter, no evidence that anyone actually lived inside these walls. It looked like a fortress, felt like a tomb. His phone buzzed against the marble counter. Sang-ho. Territory secured. East Side payments collected. $3. 2M transferred. Gyeon typed back with one hand. Good. $3.2 million. He felt nothing. He walked to his office, unlocked the bottom drawer of his desk. Inside, a small wooden box sat alone. Inside that box, a yellow ribbon so faded it was nearly white, frayed at the edges, fragile as spider silk. This was the only thing that mattered. He lifted it carefully, let it rest across his scarred palm. 20 years old. Despite his care, it was disintegrating. Every morning he looked at it. Every morning the same hunger tore through him. Where is she? He'd spent 5 years searching, hired the best investigators money could buy, purchased properties across 3 cities, hoping she'd surface, funded community programs under shell companies, tracking every name, every face. Found nothing, until 3 weeks ago, his phone buzzed again. Sang-ho. Confirmed. Kayla Keaton. Working double shifts at Mercy General. Mother with heart condition requiring expensive medication. Drowning in medical debt. loan sharks circling. Gion's jaw tightened. His fingers closed around the ribbon until his knuckles went bone white. Tonight. Tonight. The sharks would come to collect, and he would be waiting. 20 years earlier. The sun fell through the alley like liquid gold, turning garbage into treasure, making even the broken glass shimmer. Kayla Keaton stood at the edge of the shadows with her lunch tray balanced on her hip. Peanut butter sandwich, apple juice, cookies her grandmother had baked that morning. Her friend Destiny was talking about something, maybe homework. Maybe nothing, but Kayla wasn't listening. She was staring at the boy pressed against the brick wall behind the dumpster. Blood on his cheek, dirt caked in his hair. Clothes so big they swallowed his small frame whole. He watched the world like a trapped animal calculating which way to run. "Girl, you even paying attention?" Destiny snapped her fingers. Kayla blinked. "Yeah. Sorry. You keep staring at that alley like you seen a ghost." Kayla looked down at her sandwich. Her stomach growled. She hadn't eaten breakfast. Probably wouldn't eat dinner until her mama got home around 9. But something sharp and uncomfortable was digging into her chest. "I'll be right back," she said. "Where are you going?" Kayla didn't answer. She walked toward the dumpster, tray clutched tight. The boy's eyes tracked her movement, dark, wary, calculating the distance to the street. She stopped 6 feet away, close enough to see the purple bruises on his jaw, the way his hands trembled even though he tried to hide them. "You hungry?" she asked softly. The boy didn't speak, didn't move. Kayla unwrapped her sandwich, tore it in half, and held it out. "It's okay. I already ate." She hadn't. Slowly, so slowly, his hand shook the entire way he reached out, took the bread, ate like someone afraid the world would snatch it back. Like this was the first food he'd seen in days. It probably was. Kayla watched until he finished. Then she walked back to Destiny without explaining. The next day, she brought the other half. By the end of the week, she'd learned his name, Gion. He spoke English like each word cost him something, told her he'd been brought here on a boat, that men were hunting him, that he slept in places people didn't check. "Why are they looking for you?" Kayla asked one afternoon, passing him crackers through the gap in the fence. Gion's face went hard. "They said I would work in a restaurant." There was no restaurant. Kayla's stomach turned to ice. She didn't ask again. Instead, she brought more. A juice box she'd saved, chips from her lunch, a Band-Aid when she saw the gash on his arm. When winter came early and sharp, she left her jacket hanging on the fence overnight. When Gion tried to return it, shaking his head frantically, she cut him off. "You need it more than me," she said. "I can run inside when it's cold." "You can't." He stared at her like she'd just rewritten the rules of the universe. He wore that jacket until the sleeves barely covered his wrists. The day before he vanished, Gion was different. Frantic. He kept looking over his shoulder, fingers white around the fence wire. His breathing came too fast, too shallow. "What's wrong?" Kayla whispered. "They found me." His voice cracked. "I have to leave tonight. Go far away where they can't follow." Kayla's chest squeezed so tight she thought her ribs might break. "Where?" "I don't know. Anywhere." His dark eyes locked onto hers, desperate and absolute. "But I'll survive. I promise you. I'll get rich." His voice dropped, became something raw and sacred. "And when I come back, I'll marry you." Kayla laughed. Not because it was silly, because it was too big to hold. She untied the yellow ribbon from her ponytail and wrapped it around his wrist, right over a thin white scar. "So you don't forget me," she said. Gion stared at that ribbon like she'd just carved a vow into his bones. "Never," he whispered. The next morning, the alley was empty. Kayla stood there for 20 minutes in the cold, staring at nothing. He never came back. Until tonight. Tonight, Kayla Keaton would walk out of Mercy General after a 16-hour shift. Tonight, 3 men with dead eyes and baseball bats would corner her in the parking garage, demanding payment her mother's medical bills had made impossible. And tonight, Gion Myung would step out of the shadows, not to repay a debt, to collect on a promise. Subscribe to see how this unfolds, and comment where you're watching from. I'd love to say hello to you, just to know how far our story is reaching. The alley behind Greenfield Elementary smelled like rain and rotting vegetables. It was the kind of place adults told kids to avoid, where broken bottles caught sunlight like scattered diamonds and graffiti told stories in languages Kayla couldn't read. But on that September afternoon, with the sun pouring gold between brick buildings, it didn't feel dangerous. It felt like a secret. Kayla was supposed to be eating lunch with the other fourth graders on the blacktop. Instead, she stood at the mouth of the alley, watching the boy who'd been there for 3 days now. He never came closer, never asked for anything, just sat with his back against the dumpster, watching the world with eyes that looked too old for his face. Today, there was fresh blood on his temple. Destiny grabbed her arm. "Girl," Mrs. Chen said, "we gotta stay on school property. You're gonna get us in trouble." "I'll be quick," Kayla said, pulling free. "Quick doing what? That boy don't even go here. Probably got diseases or something." Kayla ignored her. She walked into the alley with her brown paper bag clutched against her chest. Her shoes, hand-me-downs from her cousin, held together with duct tape her grandmother had tried to color match with Sharpie scuffed against broken concrete. The boy tensed. His whole body went rigid, ready to bolt. "Hey," Kayla said softly, stopping 10 feet away. "I'm not gonna hurt you." He didn't answer. His eyes darted to the street behind her, calculating escape routes. Up close, she could see he was maybe her age, maybe a little older, Asian, with black hair hanging in his eyes and clothes so filthy they'd turned from whatever color they'd been to a uniform gray-brown. The blood on his temple was fresh, still wet, like someone had hit him within the hour. "You hungry?" she asked. Still nothing. Kayla opened her lunch bag. Inside was a peanut butter sandwich her grandmother had made that morning, an apple with a soft spot, and 3 cookies wrapped in plastic wrap. Her stomach growled just looking at it. She'd skipped breakfast because they'd run out of cereal, and Mama's paycheck wasn't until Friday, but something about the way this boy looked at her like he was afraid she might throw rocks like the other kids had yesterday made her stomach hurt worse than hunger. She pulled out the sandwich, tore it in half, and set one piece on the ground between them. Then she backed up. "It's safe," she said. "Promise." The boy stared at the bread like it might vanish if he looked away. His hands shook. After a long moment, he lunged forward, grabbed it, and retreated to the shadows. He ate the way animals ate in those nature documentaries, fast, defensive, barely chewing. Kayla watched until he finished. Then she set down the apple and walked away without another word. The next day, she brought him the other half of her sandwich. The day after that, crackers and a juice box. By the end of the week, he'd stopped flinching when she approached. "What's your name?" she asked on day 6, sitting cross-legged at the edge of the alley while he ate the granola bar she'd brought. He looked at her for a long time before answering. "Gyan." His accent was thick, making the word sound softer than English. "I'm Kayla," she smiled. "You got a last name?" "Myung." "Gyeon Myung," she repeated, testing the sounds. "That's pretty. Where you from?" His face closed off immediately. "Far." She didn't push. Instead, she told him about school, about her grandmother's rules, about how her mama worked nights at the hospital and came home so tired she sometimes fell asleep with her shoes still on. She talked until the bell rang, then left him half her lunch and ran back to class. It became their routine. Lunch every day. Sometimes breakfast if she could sneak food out without her grandmother noticing. As autumn turned the air sharp and the trees into fire, she learned pieces of his story. Never the whole truth, he was too afraid to give her that, but enough. He'd been brought to America on a boat. Promised work, promised safety. Instead, he'd been locked in a warehouse with other kids, told he owed money for his passage. Money he could never repay. He'd escaped 3 months ago. Been running ever since. "The men looking for you?" Kayla asked one afternoon in October, watching him devour an apple. "What happens if they find you?" Gyan's jaw tightened. "They make me disappear. Or worse." "Worse than disappearing?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Winter came early that year. By November, the alley that had been golden in September turned gray and brutal. Rain fell sideways. Wind cut through thin jackets like they weren't there at all. Kayla showed up one morning without her coat. "Where is your jacket?" Gyan asked immediately. His English getting better every day. Forgot it. She lied. He found it that afternoon, hanging on the chain-link fence behind the apartment building where he'd been sleeping. He tried to return it the next day, pushing it through the gap in the fence with frantic hands. "No," he said, his voice urgent. You will get sick." "You'll get sick too," Kayla countered. "I got a house. I got heat. You're sleeping outside, Gyan. You need it more." His eyes went wide, then wet. He looked at the jacket in his hands like she'd just handed him something sacred instead of a 6-year-old coat with a broken zipper. "Why?" he whispered. "Why what?" "Why you are kind to me. Nobody else." His voice cracked. "Nobody else sees me." Kayla's throat went tight. "Because you're not invisible. You're just a kid. Like me." He wore that jacket every day after that, even when the sleeves stopped covering his wrists. December came with frost and Christmas lights and Kayla's birthday. She turned 9 on the 15th. Her grandmother made a cake from a box mix and let her invite Destiny over to watch movies. It was the best day she'd had in months. The next morning, she brought Gyan a piece of leftover cake wrapped in aluminum foil. He ate it slowly, savoring each bite. When he finished, he looked at her with something fierce and determined burning in his eyes. "One day," he said carefully, "I will be rich. I will have money and house and food every day, and I will remember this. I will remember you." Kayla smiled. "You don't gotta remember. We're friends now. You're not going anywhere." But 3 weeks later, everything changed. January 6th. The sky was the color of old bruises. Gyan was waiting in the alley like always, but something was wrong. His eyes were wild. Hunted, he kept looking over his shoulder, breathing too fast. "What happened?" Kayla asked, her heart starting to pound. "They found me." The words came out strangled. "The men. They know I'm here. They came to the place I was sleeping last night. I ran, but..." He grabbed the fence so hard his knuckles went white. "I have to leave. Tonight. Have to go somewhere they can't follow. Where?" "I don't know. Anywhere. South, maybe. I heard about places. Other cities." His voice broke. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You have been so kind, and I..." "Hey!" Kayla reached through the fence, grabbed his hand. It was freezing. "Don't apologize. You gotta survive. That's all that matters." Gyan's eyes locked onto hers. Dark and desperate and absolutely certain. "I will survive," he said. "I promise you. I'll find a way to get rich. To be strong. And when I come back," his grip on her hand tightened, "I'll marry you. I'll come back and marry you and take care of you the way you took care of me." Kayla laughed, but not because it was silly. Because the promise was too enormous to fit inside her 9-year-old chest. Because she could see he meant every impossible word. She pulled the yellow ribbon from her ponytail, the one her grandmother had bought in a 3-pack from the dollar store. Nothing special, just cheap polyester, and reached through the fence to tie it around his wrist. Her fingers fumbled with the knot, making it tight enough to stay but loose enough not to cut off his circulation. "So you remember," she said. "So when you're all grown up and rich and important, you remember the girl who gave you sandwiches." Gyan stared at the ribbon like she'd just branded a vow onto his skin. "I will never forget," he whispered. "Never." "And when you come back," Kayla said, trying to sound brave even though her throat was closing up. "I better get a real wedding. With a cake and everything." He almost smiled. "Almost. The biggest cake. I promise." They stood there for another minute, hands linked through the fence, neither wanting to let go. Then a car backfired on the street, and Gyan jerked like he'd been shot. "I have to go," he said. "Now, be safe," Kayla whispered. He nodded once, fierce and final, then turned and ran into the labyrinth of alleys behind the building. She watched until he disappeared around a corner, swallowed by shadows. The next morning, the alley was empty. Kayla waited for 20 minutes in the freezing rain, hoping he'd come back, hoping he'd say he'd found a new hiding place, that everything was okay. But he never did. 20 years felt like yesterday, and forever at the same time. Kayla Keaton stood in the break room of Mercy General Hospital at 2:47 a.m., staring at her phone screen. 17 missed calls. 8 voicemails she couldn't bring herself to listen to. 12 text messages, each one more threatening than the last. Final notice. Payment overdue. We know where you work. Her hands shook as she poured burnt coffee into a styrofoam cup. She'd been on shift for 14 hours, had 4 more to go. Her feet screamed inside, shoes held together with superglue. Her scrubs had a stain she couldn't identify and didn't have time to care about. "Girl, you look like death," Monica said, walking in and grabbing her own cup. "When's the last time you slept? What sleep?" Kayla tried to smile. Failed. Monica's expression softened. "How's your mama?" "Heart medication and treatment 3 times a week. Insurance covers some of it. The rest," she gestured vaguely at her phone, "I'm figuring it out. And by figuring it out, you mean working yourself into the ground while those vultures keep calling." Kayla didn't answer. She couldn't, because Monica was right and they both knew it. The loan sharks had started small. Just a temporary bridge loan to cover her mother's medication when she'd lost her job. Reasonable interest, 30 days to pay it back, except her mother's heart had gotten worse. The medication hadn't been enough. Surgery became necessary. Surgery meant more time off work. More time off work meant more loans. More loans meant interest compounding into something impossible. Now she owed $47,000 to men who didn't accept late payments or excuses. "You still got your shift tomorrow night?" Monica asked. "Yeah, and I picked up Saturday too." "Kayla, you're gonna collapse." "Can't afford to collapse." She drained her coffee in 3 burning gulps. "I collapse. Mama doesn't get her treatment. She doesn't get her treatment. She dies. Pretty simple math." Monica looked like she wanted to argue. Instead, she just squeezed Kayla's shoulder and walked out, leaving her alone with the fluorescent lights and the smell of industrial cleaning solution. Kayla's phone buzzed. Another text. "Tomorrow, 11 p.m., parking garage. Don't make us come find you." Her stomach turned to ice. She deleted the message, finished her shift, drove home to the apartment that cost too much and smelled like the mildew they couldn't afford to fix. Her mother was asleep on the couch, IV pole standing guard beside her like a skeletal sentinel. The television played an infomercial at low volume. Kayla covered her with a blanket, checked the IV bag, and collapsed into her own bed without bothering to change clothes. She dreamed of alleyways and yellow ribbons and promises too big to keep. The next night came too fast. Kayla finished her shift at 10:45. Her entire body ached. Her mind felt wrapped in cotton. All she wanted was to go home, check on her mother, and sleep for 12 hours straight. Instead, she walked to the parking garage with her keys clutched between her knuckles like the self-defense videos had taught her. Level 3 was nearly empty. Most of the day shift had gone home hours ago. Night shift parked on level 1, which meant she was alone except for the flickering fluorescent lights and the sound of her own footsteps echoing off concrete. Her car was at the far end. A 15-year-old Honda with a dent in the bumper and an engine that made concerning noises every time she hit 40 miles per hour. But it ran. Most days. She was 20 feet away when 3 men stepped out from behind a support column. Kayla froze. She recognized the one in front. Marcus. She'd met him twice before. Once when she'd taken out the original loan, once when she'd begged for an extension. He was tall, white, with a shaved head and teeth too perfect to be real. The 2 men flanking him were new, both carrying baseball bats. "Miss Keaton," Marcus said, his voice friendly. Too friendly. "You've been avoiding my calls." "I'm working on getting the money," Kayla said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "I just need a little more time." "Time." Marcus shook his head sadly. "That's what everyone says. But time costs money. And money is what you don't have." He gestured to his companions. "These are my associates. They're here to help you understand that we're serious about collecting what's owed." "Please," Kayla whispered. "My mother, she's sick. I'm doing everything I can." "Not enough." Marcus stepped closer. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to give us everything in your purse. Then you're going to go to an ATM and withdraw your daily limit. Then, she's not giving you anything." The voice came from the shadows behind her car. Deep, cold, absolutely certain. Kayla spun around. A man stepped into the sickly fluorescent light, tall, maybe 6'2" or 6'3", Korean, with sharp cheekbones and eyes like black ice. His hair was slicked back perfectly. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than her car, crisp white shirt unbuttoned at the collar to reveal the edge of a massive tattoo that disappeared beneath the fabric. He moved like violence contained, like something dangerous pretending to be civilized. Marcus recovered first. "This doesn't concern you, friend. Walk away." The man didn't even look at him. His eyes were locked on Kayla, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "Walk away," Marcus repeated, harder this time. "Or my associates will make you." The two men with baseball bats stepped forward. The stranger finally looked at them. Just looked. Didn't move, didn't speak. But something in his expression made both men hesitate. "Last warning," Marcus said. The stranger smiled. It wasn't a happy expression. It was the kind of smile a wolf gave before it attacked. "No," he said softly. "Last warning is mine. Leave, now, or I will break every bone in your body and leave you crying for your mother." Marcus laughed. "Big talk for one man against three. Let's see if—" The stranger moved. Kayla didn't even see him cross the distance. 1 second he was standing still. The next, he had the first man's wrist twisted at an angle that made Kayla's stomach lurch. The baseball bat clattered to the concrete. The man screamed. The second one swung his bat with everything he had. The stranger caught it mid-swing with his free hand. Didn't even flinch. He ripped it away, reversed his grip, and slammed it into the man's knee with a crack that echoed through the garage like a gunshot. The man went down howling. 10 seconds. The whole thing took maybe 10 seconds. Marcus stumbled backward, reaching into his jacket. The stranger was already there. He grabbed Marcus's wrist, twisted, and something metallic skittered across the concrete. A gun. Marcus had been reaching for a gun. "The debt is paid," the stranger said, his voice perfectly calm, like he was discussing the weather instead of standing over 3 men he'd just destroyed. He pulled something from his jacket pocket. A thick envelope. He threw it at Marcus's feet. 47,000. "Cash, we're done here. Who the hell are you?" Marcus gasped, cradling his wrist. The stranger looked at Kayla again. Something flickered in his eyes. Something that might have been sadness or longing or both. "Nobody," he said. "Just someone repaying a very old debt." Then he grabbed the man whose wrist he was still holding and twisted sharply. The sound of breaking bone echoed through the garage. The man's scream cut off into a whimper. "That's for touching what's mine," the stranger said quietly. He released him and stepped back. "Take your money. Take your men. If I see any of you near her again, I won't stop with broken bones. Understand?" Marcus scrambled to grab the envelope, then helped his associates limp toward the elevator. Kayla stood frozen. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Her legs felt like water. The stranger turned to face her fully. Up close, she could see more details. The tattoo wasn't just on his chest, it crawled up his neck, intricate black scales or feathers that caught the light when he moved. His hands were scarred across the knuckles. His eyes were the darkest brown she'd ever seen, so dark they were almost black, and something about them was familiar. "You're safe now," he said, his voice. There was something in his voice. "Who are you?" Kayla whispered. He studied her face like he was trying to memorize every detail, like he'd been waiting years for this moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled something out. A ribbon. Yellow, faded, barely holding together. Kayla's breath stopped. "I told you I'd come back," Gyeon-myung said softly. "I told you I'd be rich." The parking garage tilted. Kayla grabbed her car for support, her mind refusing to process what her eyes were seeing. That boy. That trembling, bleeding, starving boy from the alley. This man, this terrifying, violent, powerful man couldn't be the same person. "That's not possible," she whispered. "He disappeared. He was just a kid. I survived," Gyeon said. "Like I promised." He stepped closer. Kayla stepped back, her spine hitting the car door. "Don't be afraid," he said, something cracking in his expression. "I would never hurt you. Everything I've done, everything I've become, it was all to come back to you. You broke that man's hand, Kayla said, her voice shaking. You broke it like it was nothing. He threatened you. You paid $47,000 in cash. In a parking garage. At midnight. You were drowning. I pulled you out. How did you even know I was in trouble? How did you find me? Gyeon's jaw tightened. I've always known where you were. The implication of those words hit her like cold water. You've been watching me, protecting you. That's not protection. Her voice broke. That's stalking. I haven't seen you in 20 years and suddenly you show up and… She gestured at the elevator where Marcus and his men had disappeared. You could have killed them. I wanted to, Gyeon said simply. But you're not the kind of woman who wants blood on her hands. So I held back. That violence had been him holding back. Kayla's hands were shaking. I don't know you. You're not the boy I fed. You're not… I am exactly the boy you fed, Gyeon interrupted. You gave me bread when no one else would see me. You gave me your jacket. You tied your ribbon around my wrist and told me to remember you. His voice dropped, became something raw. I remember everything. Every kindness. Every smile. Every moment you chose to see me as human instead of trash. He held up the faded ribbon. I kept my promise, Kayla. I got rich. And now I'm here to keep the second half of that promise. What second half? His eyes burned into hers. I'm here to marry you. The world seemed to stop spinning. You're insane, Kayla whispered. Probably. He didn't look away. But you saved my life. Now I'm saving yours. And I'm not leaving you in this situation. Those men will come back. With more men. More weapons. I know how this works. His expression went cold. Better than you can imagine. So what? You just appear out of nowhere and expect me to what? Run away with you? Not run away. Gyeon's voice was absolutely certain. Come home. You and your mother. I have a place. Safe. Secure. They'll never touch you again. I have a job. A life. I don't know you anymore. You knew me when it mattered most. He stepped closer. She had nowhere to retreat. I'm not asking you to love me. Not yet. I'm asking you to let me protect you. Let me repay the debt I owe. You paid the debt. $47,000. That was money, Gyeon said. The debt I owe can't be measured in cash. You gave me humanity when I had none. You gave me hope when I was dying in an alley. You saved me, Kayla. His voice cracked. Now let me save you. Kayla's phone buzzed. A text from her mother's nurse. BP dropping. Might need to adjust meds. Call when you can. She looked at the phone. Looked at Gyeon. Looked at the envelope of cash still sitting on the concrete. I need to think, she said. Think fast, Gyeon replied. Because Marcus will report this to his boss. His boss will want to know who interfered. And when they find out, they'll come at you harder. Tomorrow night. Maybe. Maybe the night after. But they will come. He held out a business card. This is the address. Top floor. Tell security your name. They'll let you up. Kayla didn't take the card. Gyeon set it on the hood of her car. Then he stepped back, giving her space. I waited 20 years, he said quietly. I can wait another day for you to decide. But after that, his expression hardened. After that, I'm moving you myself. Choice or no choice. I didn't survive hell just to watch you die because you're too stubborn to accept help. He walked toward a black car she hadn't noticed before, parked in the shadows. Expensive. Foreign. The kind of car that cost 6 figures. Gyeon. She called out. He stopped. Turned. That boy in the alley, Kayla said, her voice shaking. Would he do what you just did? Would he hurt people like that? Something painful flashed across his face. That boy died a long time ago, he said. But the man he became remembers everything that boy loved. Then he got in his car and drove away, leaving Kayla standing in the parking garage with a business card and $47,000 in cash and a yellow ribbon that shouldn't still exist after 20 years. She didn't sleep that night. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor of the building. 42nd floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of the city that looked almost pretty from this height, all the dirt and desperation hidden by distance. Kayla stood in the marble entryway with her mother beside her, both of them staring at the space like they'd been transported to another planet. Everything was expensive. Not just expensive, obscenely wealthy. Black marble floors, white walls, modern furniture that looked like art instead of something meant to be sat on, a kitchen with appliances Kayla had only seen in magazines, and absolutely no warmth, no photographs, no personal items, no indication that anyone actually lived here. It looked like a museum, or a fortress. "This is your home?" Mrs. Keaton asked, staring at Gyan. "It's a safe place," Gyan replied. Nothing more. Two men in suits stood by the door. Security. Armed, though they tried to hide it. Another man sat at a desk in the corner, monitoring a bank of screens showing every angle of the building, every entrance and exit. "The bedroom on the east side is for you, Mrs. Keaton," Gyan said, his tone formal, professional, like he was conducting a business transaction. "Private bathroom. Medical equipment has been delivered. A nurse will check on you daily." "I don't need—" Mrs. Keaton started. "Yes, you do," Gyan said simply. "Not cruel, just stating facts. Your cardiac treatment schedule has been adjusted. The clinic is 10 minutes away. My driver will take you." "We can't accept this," Kayla said, even though they'd already moved in, even though her mother's medications were already arranged on the kitchen counter, even though her few possessions were already unpacked in the guest room. "This is too much." Gyan looked at her. Really looked, the way he had in the parking garage. "It's not enough," he said quietly. "It will never be enough to repay what you gave me. I gave you sandwiches. You gave me humanity." His voice dropped. "In a world that had beaten every shred of it out of me, you made me remember I was human. You think money can repay that?" Mrs. Keaton watched them with sharp eyes. She'd been doing that since Kayla had explained the situation, watching Gyan like he was a puzzle she couldn't solve. "This boy you fed," she said slowly. "The one you told me about when you were little. That's him?" "Yes," Kayla said. "And he's been watching you for how long?" Gyan's jaw tightened. 5 years since I found her again." 5 years, Mrs. Keaton repeated. "And you didn't approach her until now?" "I had nothing to offer her before." He gestured at the penthouse. "Nothing that wouldn't have pulled her into my world. But when those men threatened her, I had no choice." "Your world," Mrs. Keaton said. "What world is that, exactly?" Gyan didn't answer. He didn't have to. The tattoos told the story. The security team told the story. The way he moved, the way he spoke, the casual violence in the parking garage, all of it told the story. "You're a criminal," Mrs. Keaton said flatly. "Yes. No apology. No justification. Just yes. And you want to marry my daughter?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because I promised her I would," Gyan said. "And I keep my promises." Mrs. Keaton studied him for a long moment. Then she looked at Kayla. "What do you want, baby girl?" Kayla didn't know how to answer that. What did she want? To go back to her cramped apartment and crushing debt? To keep working herself to death while loan sharks circled? Or to stay here, in this cold fortress, with a man who'd once been a starving boy but was now something she didn't recognize? "I want to keep Mama safe," she finally said. "That's all I know right now." Mrs. Keaton nodded. "Then we stay. For now." She pointed at Gyan. "But you hurt her emotionally, physically, any way at all, and I don't care how many men with guns you have. I will find a way to make you regret it." Something that might have been respect flickered in Gyan's eyes. "Understood." He showed them the rest of the penthouse. Guest rooms, office, a library filled with books that looked like they'd never been opened. Everything perfect. Everything empty. Kayla found him later that night, standing by the windows, staring out at the city. His jacket was off, shirt sleeves rolled up. She could see the full extent of the tattoos now, a massive dragon that covered his chest and coiled up his neck, scales detailed and intricate. On his left arm, something that looked like characters in Korean script. "Can't sleep?" she asked. He didn't turn around. "I don't sleep much." She moved to stand beside him, keeping a careful distance. "This place is beautiful," she said. "But it's lonely, isn't it?" "Yes," Is this really what you wanted? When you promised you'd get rich? Gyan was quiet for a long time. I wanted power, he finally said. Enough power that no one could ever hurt me again. Enough money that I'd never be hungry. Enough respect that people would see me instead of looking through me. He touched the window glass. I got all of that. But it's empty, he said softly. Every achievement, every victory, it's all hollow because the one person I wanted to share it with wasn't here. Kayla's throat tightened. You don't know me anymore. I'm not that little girl who gave you sandwiches. I know. He finally looked at her. But I'd like to know the woman she became. If you'll let me. She wanted to say no. Wanted to run from this beautiful prison and the dangerous man who'd built it. But when she looked at him, really looked, she could see traces of that boy. In the way he held himself carefully, like he expected the world to attack. In the way his eyes tracked every sound. In the loneliness that radiated from him like cold from stone. I'll stay, she said. For Mama. But I'm not marrying you, Gyan. That promise we were kids. It doesn't count. Pain flickered across his face. It counts to me. I'm sorry. He nodded. I'll wait. However long it takes. I'm good at waiting. He walked away, leaving her alone by the windows. Kayla looked out at the city spread below like scattered diamonds. Somewhere down there were the alleys where they'd met. The school. The fence where she'd tied a yellow ribbon around a starving boy's wrist. That boy was gone. In his place was a man who'd clawed his way out of hell through blood and violence and sheer stubborn will. And despite everything, despite the fear and the confusion and the absolute insanity of this situation, a tiny part of her wondered if that boy might still be somewhere inside the monster he'd become. Only time would tell. 3 days passed in the fortress. Kayla learned the rhythms of the penthouse, how the security team changed shifts at 6-hour intervals, how Gyan disappeared into his office for hours at a time, taking calls in Korean that sounded like orders, how the nurse who came to check on her mother was professional and kind and asked no questions about why they needed armed guards. On the 4th night, Kayla found her mother in what Gyan called the blue room, a sitting area off the main living space with a small bar and floor-to-ceiling windows. The city lights turned everything cold and distant. Her mother sat at the table, phone clutched in one hand, a glass of whiskey in the other. Gyan stood by the window like a sentinel, still wearing his dress shirt and pants from whatever business he'd conducted that day, but the shirt was unbuttoned enough to reveal the tattoos that disappeared beneath the fabric. He wasn't looking at them. He was looking out, watching for threats that might never come. Mama? Kayla said softly. Mrs. Keaton looked up. Her eyes were red. Can't sleep, she said. Keep thinking about those men. What they would have done if... She took a shaky sip of whiskey. I keep thinking we should call the police. The police can't help, Gyan said without turning around. His voice was quiet. Certain. The people Marcus works for, they have lawyers. Connections. By the time police get involved, you'd both be dead and it would look like an accident. That's a comforting thought, Mrs. Keaton said dryly. It's the truth. He finally looked at them. I'm sorry you're in this situation, but you're safer here than anywhere else in the city. Because you're dangerous, Kayla said. Yes. Mrs. Keaton set down her glass. I'm going to bed. My old bones can't take this stress. She stood, squeezed Kayla's hand, and left them alone in the blue-lit room. Kayla moved to the window, standing a few feet from Gyan. Up close, she could see the exhaustion in his face, the way his jaw was tight with tension. He probably slept less than he claimed. Can I ask you something? She said. Anything. The tattoos. What do they mean? Gyan looked down at his arms, then touched his chest where the dragon tattoo began. At the massive dragon that covered his chest and rose up his neck, the Korean characters on his left arm. The dragon represents rebirth, he said, rising from nothing, from the gutter. He touched the characters on his left arm. These are the names of the men who enslaved me, the ones who brought me here on that boat. Kayla's breath caught. Why would you tattoo their names on your body? His smile was cold. So I'd remember every single one when I killed them. The casual way he said it made her stomach turn. You killed them. Everyone. No remorse. No hesitation. It took me 8 years, but I found them all. Gyan, you asked. He looked at her. You want to know who I am? That's who I am. I'm the boy you fed, yes. But I'm also the man who burned down the trafficking ring that owned me, who climbed over bodies to build an empire, who spent 20 years becoming something terrifying enough that no one would ever make me feel small again. Kayla's hands shook. That's not the boy I knew. That boy died the night I ran, Gyan said. He died in a shipping container, surrounded by other kids who didn't make it across the ocean. He died in a warehouse where men beat him for speaking. He died in alleys, in basements, in places you can't imagine. His voice dropped. The man standing in front of you is what survived. Then why come back? Kayla whispered. Why not just forget? Start over somewhere else? Because you were the only light in all that darkness. His eyes burned into hers. Every time I wanted to give up, I remembered your face, your smile, the way you looked at me like I was worth something, like I mattered. He touched the place on his wrist where the ribbon used to be tied. You gave me a reason to survive. So, I survived. Kayla felt tears building. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry you went through that. Don't apologize. He stepped closer. You saved me. Everything else, the pain, the violence, the years, it was all worth it to come back to you. But I'm not. She struggled for words. I'm not this perfect person you've built up in your head. I'm just someone who gave a hungry kid food. That's all. That's everything, Gyan said. In a world that taught me humans were cruel, you taught me they could be kind. You didn't save my life that day in the alley. You saved my soul. The air between them felt heavy, charged. Kayla wanted to step back but couldn't make herself move. I'm afraid of you, she admitted. Not just what you've done, what you could do. The violence in you, it's right there, under the surface. I can see it. Good, Gyan said. You should be afraid. I am dangerous. But never to you. Never. How can I believe that? Because I've had 1,000 opportunities to hurt you, he said simply. To take what I want, instead of waiting for you to give it. But I won't. I'll wait forever if that's what it takes. He turned back to the window, dismissing himself from the conversation, giving her space. Kayla stood there for another minute, watching his reflection in the glass. Then she went to bed and dreamed of dragons and ribbons and boys who died so monsters could live. The next morning, Kayla woke to the smell of burning. She stumbled out of her bedroom in pajamas to find Gyan in the kitchen, surrounded by smoke and what looked like the remains of several failed breakfast attempts. Eggs, somehow both burnt and raw. Toast that was charcoal, something that might have been pancakes but looked like hockey pucks. What are you doing? She asked. Gyan turned, looking almost embarrassed. It was the most human expression she'd seen on his face. Cooking, he said. Or trying to. Why? You've been eating the food my staff prepares. It's good, but it's not. He gestured vaguely. You used to bring me simple food, sandwiches, crackers. I thought maybe. He trailed off, looking at the disaster surrounding him. Kayla couldn't help it. She laughed. Actually laughed for the first time in days. It's not funny, Gyan said, but there was something soft in his expression. It's a little funny. She moved into the kitchen, assessing the damage. How did you burn water? I don't know, he admitted. I've never cooked before. Never? I have people for that. Kayla shook her head. Okay, move aside. I'll show you. She opened the refrigerator, which was stocked with expensive ingredients she'd never heard of, and pulled out the basics. Bread, butter, eggs, cheese. We're making grilled cheese, she announced. And you're helping. For the next 20 minutes, she taught Gyan how to make one of the simplest meals in existence. He watched her every move with intense focus, like she was teaching him surgery instead of sandwich construction. His hands, scarred and dangerous, moved carefully as he buttered bread, placed cheese, monitored the pan. When they finished, she made him sit at the breakfast bar and eat the sandwich he'd made. Gyan took a bite, chewed slowly. Something profound shifted in his expression. What? Kayla asked. It tastes like that day, he said quietly. in the alley, like hope. Kayla's throat tightened. She'd made herself a sandwich, too. She took a bite, trying to taste what he tasted. But to her, it was just bread and cheese and butter. To him, it was salvation. You don't need expensive restaurants, she said softly. You don't need to buy me things or prove how rich you've become. That boy I fed, he didn't need any of that either. He just needed to be seen. Gyeon set down his sandwich. And do you see me now? Kayla looked at him. Really looked. Past the tattoos and the expensive clothes and the violence. Looked for traces of that trembling boy in the alley. And found him. In the way Gyeon's hands shook slightly, holding the sandwich. In the way his eyes went soft when he looked at her. In the loneliness that radiated from him despite all his power. I see you, she said. He reached across the breakfast bar, slowly, giving her time to pull away. His hand covered hers. Warm, solid, real. Thank you, he whispered. They sat there in the morning light, hands touching, eating simple sandwiches. And for just a moment, the fortress didn't feel quite so cold. Kayla found the surveillance room by accident. She'd been looking for Gyeon, wanting to ask about taking her mother to a doctor's appointment. One of the security guards had said he was downstairs, which she'd assumed meant his office. Instead, she found a door she'd never noticed before, slightly ajar, light spilling through the crack. She pushed it open. The room was small, lined with monitors, and on those monitors, her breath stopped. Security footage. Dozens of angles, but not of the penthouse. These were external cameras, and she recognized the locations, the hospital where she worked, multiple angles of the parking garage, the entrance, the break room, her apartment building, the front door, the hallway, even the street outside, the grocery store she shopped at, the pharmacy, the dialysis center. Every place she went, every routine she had, all of it monitored, recorded, watched. How long have you been standing there? She spun around. Gyeon stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. How long have you been watching me? Her voice shook. 5 years, you said. 5 years of this? I needed to keep you safe. This isn't safe, she gestured at the screens. This is stalking. This is... She struggled to breathe. You've been in my life this whole time and I didn't know. Watching me work, watching me shop, watching... I never watched you in your home, Gyeon said. Or anywhere private. Only public spaces. Only to ensure you were safe. That doesn't make it better. Kayla's voice broke. You violated my privacy. My life. You had no right. I had every right. For the first time, Gyeon's voice rose. You saved me. That gives me the right to ensure you're safe. That gives me the right to... To what? Own me? She moved toward the door. I'm not your property. I'm not something you can buy with surveillance cameras, and she tried to push past him. He caught her wrist. Gently, but firmly. Let me go, she said. Kayla, please. Let me explain. Explain what? How you've been stalking me? How you knew about the loan sharks because you were watching me fall apart? How you waited until I was desperate enough that I'd have no choice but to come here? That's not... He released her wrist. That's not what happened. Then what? What am I supposed to think? Gyeon's expression cracked. I was trying to protect you. That's all I've ever wanted. When I found you again 5 years ago, you were happy. You had a job, friends, a life. I had nothing to offer but violence and danger. So I stayed away. I just watched to make sure you were safe. You should have stayed away entirely. I tried. The anguish in his voice made her stop. I tried to forget you, to let you live your life, but I couldn't. Because every time I closed my eyes, I saw you in that alley. Saw you reaching through a fence to feed me. And I thought... His voice broke. I thought maybe if I could just keep you safe, even from a distance, it would be enough. It's not enough, Kayla said. It's creepy and wrong, and I can't stay here. She pushed past him. He didn't stop her this time. She went straight to her mother's room. We're leaving, she said. Mrs. Keaton looked up from her book. What happened? He's been watching me. For years. Cameras everywhere I go. It's not safe here, Mama. It's a prison. Baby girl. No. Kayla was already pulling out suitcases. We'll figure something else out. The loan sharks will go to the police, The police can't help, Mrs. Keaton said quietly. Then we'll leave the city. Start over somewhere. Anything is better than staying with someone who's been stalking me. Her mother was quiet for a long moment. Then, he saved us. He manipulated us. Maybe. Mrs. Keaton closed her book. Or maybe he's just a broken man who doesn't know how to love someone without trying to control everything around them. Either way. She gestured at her medication schedule and monitoring equipment. I can't run, Kayla. My body can't take it. And neither can yours. We'll manage. For how long? A week? A month? Then what? Those loan sharks don't forget. And Gyeon's right, the people they work for have long memories. So what, I just accept this? Accept being watched? I'm saying talk to him, Mrs. Keaton said. Tell him to take down the cameras. Set boundaries. He'll listen. How do you know? Because he looks at you the way your father looked at me, her mother said softly. Like you're the only real thing in a world of shadows. Men like that, they'll burn the world down for you, but they need to be taught how to love without destroying. Kayla wanted to argue, but she was exhausted, and her mother was right, they had nowhere else to go. I need air, she said. I'm going for a walk. Take security. I don't want security. I want to be alone. She left before her mother could argue, left before Gyeon could stop her. Took the elevator down 42 floors and walked out into the city without looking back. The evening air was cold, sharp. She walked without direction, just needing to move, needing to think. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple that reminded her of that alley 20 years ago. She didn't notice the car following her until it was too late. They grabbed her at a crosswalk. 2 men, moving fast, a hand over her mouth, an arm around her waist. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. Tried to fight, but they were too strong. A van pulled up. Door sliding open. They threw her inside and the world tilted. Got her. Someone said into a phone. Yeah, Gyeon's bitch. Tell him we want to talk. The van door slammed shut. Darkness. The smell of cigarettes and old fast food. Kayla's heart hammered so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Please, she gasped. Please, I don't... Shut up. A man's voice. Cold. You're just the message. Stay quiet and you might live through this. The van drove for what felt like hours, but was probably 20 minutes. When they finally stopped and dragged her out, she found herself in a warehouse. Empty. Dark. The kind of place where people disappeared. A man sat in a chair in the center of the space. Older. Korean. Wearing an expensive suit that couldn't hide the cruel intelligence in his eyes. Kayla Keaton, he said. I've heard so much about you. Who are you? My name is Choi Sung-min. I run the Viper Tongue Syndicate. He smiled. Gyeon Myung's greatest enemy. Kayla's blood turned to ice. He didn't tell you about me? Choi laughed. Of course not. He probably thought he could keep you safe in his little fortress. But see, I've been watching too, waiting for him to show weakness. And you, he gestured at her. You're his greatest weakness. I don't know anything, Kayla said. I'm not part of his world. No, but he'd burn his entire empire to get you back. Which is exactly what I'm counting on. He pulled out a phone. Dialed. Put it on speaker. Gyeon answered on the first ring. What? I have something that belongs to you, Choi said. Silence. Then, if you hurt her, you'll what? Storm my warehouse alone? Kill my men? You're not that stupid, Gyeon. Or are you? Choi's smile widened. Here's the deal. You come alone, unarmed. You kneel at my feet and beg for her life. Then maybe I'll let her go before I put a bullet in your head. Done, Gyeon said immediately. Where? Choi gave the address. You have 1 hour. Come alone or she dies. He hung up, looked at Kayla. He really does love you. How sweet. Too bad love makes men weak. Kayla's mind raced. This was her fault. She'd left the penthouse, left the protection, and now Gyeon was going to die because of it. 53 minutes later, the warehouse door opened. Gyan walked in alone. No guards. No weapons that Kayla could see. Just him in a black shirt and pants, hands visible and empty. He looked at her first, eyes scanning for injuries. Then at Choi. "Let her go," Gyan said. "Not yet," Choi gestured. "Kneel." Gyan hesitated for only a second. Then he dropped to his knees in the center of the warehouse. "Beg," Choi ordered. "Please." Gyan's voice was steady, emotionless. "Let her go. She has nothing to do with this. Your fight is with me." "Oh, I know." Choi stood, pulling a gun from his jacket. He walked over to Gyan, pressed the barrel against his forehead. "Any last words before I end the great Gyeon Myung?" Gyeon looked at Kayla. "I'm sorry," he said, "for watching you, for not giving you choice, for dragging you into this. You deserved better. You always deserved better. How touching," Choi said. "Now," Gyeon moved. Kayla didn't even see how. 1 second he was kneeling. The next he had Choi's wrist twisted, the gun falling, his other hand around Choi's throat. "I said I'd come alone," Gyeon said quietly. "I didn't say I'd die quietly." Choi's men rushed forward. 12 of them. Maybe more. What happened next was poetry written in violence. Gyeon fought like something inhuman, like every ounce of rage and pain and violence he'd accumulated over 20 years had been distilled into pure, efficient brutality. He broke bones with surgical precision, used his opponent's weapons against them, moved through them like water, like smoke, like death itself. Blood painted the concrete. Men screamed. Bodies fell. Kayla watched, frozen in horror and awe, as the boy she'd fed destroyed an army to save her. When it was over, Gyeon stood alone in a circle of broken men. Blood dripped from his knuckles. His shirt was torn, revealing the full extent of his tattoos and the scars beneath them. He was breathing hard but still standing. Choi was on the ground, conscious but broken. "You're dead," he gasped. "The others will come for you. For her. You can't protect her forever." "I know," Gyeon said. He looked at Kayla. "Which is why I'm done." He pulled out his phone, made a call, spoke in Korean, harsh and final. When he hung up, he crouched beside Choi. "I'm giving you my territory," Gyeon said. "All of it. The Chilseong Syndicate is yours. The businesses, the money, everything." Choi's eyes widened. "What?" "On one condition." Gyeon's voice dropped to something deadly. "You leave her alone. Her family. Her life. You never touch them. If I hear you've gone near her, if I even suspect it, I will crawl out of whatever hole I've buried myself in and I will end you slowly. Understood?" Choi stared, then nodded. Gyeon stood, walked to Kayla. Gently, carefully, he untied her wrists. "Are you hurt?" he asked softly. She shook her head, unable to speak. "Good." He cupped her face with bloody hands. "I'm sorry. For all of it. You were right, I was trying to own you instead of love you. But I'm done. You're free. Your mother's medical bills are paid for life. Your apartment building is bought, you'll never pay rent. You'll never see me again. I promise." "Gyeon, be happy," he whispered. "That's all I ever wanted." Then he walked away, out of the warehouse, out of her life, leaving her standing in the wreckage of his empire. 3 years later, the bakery sat on a quiet street corner in a neighborhood that was slowly gentrifying. Nothing fancy, just a small storefront with warm lighting and the smell of fresh bread drifting through the open door. Kayla wiped down the counter, humming to herself. The morning rush was over. The afternoon customers wouldn't arrive for another hour. Her mother sat at one of the small tables by the window, reading a book, healthy and stable and alive. The bell above the door chimed. Kayla looked up automatically. Customer service smile already in place. "Welcome to..." The words died in her throat. Gyeon stood in the doorway. He looked different. Still tall. Still powerful. But softer somehow. The sharp edges worn down. He wore jeans and a simple black t-shirt. His hair was longer, less severe. The tattoos were still visible at his collar and wrists, but they seemed like art now instead of armor. "Hi," he said quietly. Kayla's heart hammered. Hi. They stared at each other. 3 years of silence stretching between them. I heard you opened a bakery, Gyan said. Thought I'd... He gestured vaguely. I'll go if you want. I just wanted to see... Stay, Kayla said. Please. He moved to the counter carefully, like he was afraid she'd change her mind. What can I get you? She asked. Just coffee. Black. She poured it. Their fingers touched when she handed him the cup. He flinched like she'd burned him. How are you? She asked. Alive. He took a sip. Clean. Legitimate. I bought a small construction company. We renovate old buildings. It's honest work. He smiled slightly. Boring, but honest. That's good. And you? Your mother? She's great. Healthy. We're good. Another silence. So much unsaid. I'm sorry, Gyan said finally. For everything. For watching you. For controlling you. For... I know, Kayla interrupted. I forgave you a long time ago. His eyes widened. What? You were broken, she said. I didn't understand that at first. But you spent your whole life in a world where love meant ownership, where protection meant control. You didn't know any other way. She leaned against the counter. But you learned. You let me go. You walked away even though it killed you. That's real love. I thought I was doing the right thing. You were. She paused. But I missed you. Gyan's breath caught. You did? Every day. She smiled. Turns out I fell in love with a boy in an alley 20 years ago. And even though he grew up into someone terrifying, somewhere inside that monster was still the boy who kept a yellow ribbon for 2 decades. Kayla. She came around the counter, stood in front of him. Are you really out? Really done with that life? Completely, he said. I meant what I said in that warehouse. All I ever wanted was you. The empire was just... He gestured. Something to fill the emptiness. But it was never enough. And now? Now I build things instead of destroying them, he said. I sleep at night. I'm trying to be the kind of man who deserves you. Kayla reached up, touched his face. He leaned into her palm like a man dying of thirst. You already are, she whispered. Gyan pulled something from his pocket. A small box. Inside, a simple ring. Not expensive. Not flashy. Just a gold band with a small diamond that caught the afternoon light. I'm finally rich enough, he said, his voice shaking. Not in money. In the things that matter. In peace. In purpose. In... He took a breath. In love. So, I'm asking you now, Kayla Keaton. Will you marry me? For real this time. Not because of a promise made by scared kids, but because I love you. Because you're the only good thing I've ever known. Kayla's eyes blurred with tears. Yes, she said. Yes, you ridiculous man. Of course, yes. He slipped the ring on her finger, kissed her softly, carefully, like she was something precious he'd finally learned not to break. Behind them, Mrs. Keaton set down her book. About time, she said.